welcome to ATN. I'm your host, Amin Dillon, and today in the show I'm chatting with Nainesh Kotak from Kotak Law. Now, Nainesh, you're no stranger to the ATN audience. I know you've been very helpful coming on the show before, answering many questions that people have about, what to do if you're injured and what to do if your claim is denied. So today we're going to continue that by answering a little bit more about questions, and today I think we should get right into it. We're going to talk about short-term disability and long-term disability. Very interesting. I'm sure people are starting to be like, okay, let's see what's the difference. We hear these terms all the time, but I think before we get into it, let's actually define them. How do we know the difference?
Well, thank you, Emma. It's a pleasure to be on, and I'll do my best to clarify that. So short-term disability is, for want of a better word, it's paid for a much shorter period of time. And quite often the employer will pay that benefit. Sometimes it's an insurance company who will pay it. You have what's called administrative services contracts, for example, where the insurance company will adjudicate it, but the employer pays. So, you have various time periods for it. It may be 16 weeks, and usually they pay a percentage of the person's salary. Sometimes it's around 66%, around there, and it could be more. Some employers give 80% or higher. And sometimes what happens, that claim will automatically transfer into a long-term disability claim if it's with the same insurance company. And some policies have the employee, when the short-term disability is done, they have to go on EI. And they go on EI for 16 weeks, I believe it's either 15 or 16 weeks, for disability EI. And then they apply for long-term disability benefits, and then there may be a waiting period with that. So there's similar tests for disability there. The short-term disability test is really, are they disabled from doing the essential tasks of the job that they had? And the payments are obviously for a shorter period of time. So that's sort of the nutshell, and the payer might be different than the long-term disability carrier as well. Yeah,
so it sounds like there's a lot of steps somebody has to go through if you have long-term disability, which makes it even harder. Let's actually maybe give some examples. So what are some ailments, some type of ailments that would result in a short-term versus a long-term?
Right. Well, often they're one of the same in terms of the ailment. You could differentiate. For example, let's say someone broke their leg, and that's going to get better, but they need to go on short term. They may have sick benefits that they use, need to go on short-term disability, but they get better, the leg heals, and they go back. So that would be a case where they would have, exercise the short-term disability benefits, but not the long-term disability benefits. In terms of ailments in general that would give rise to both, you'd be surprised that what you see out there, and some people don't often appreciate that sometimes it is stress, it is anxiety. And people in that situation, I find, are a little bit fearful. Well, I don't really have a diagnosed disorder yet. Physically, well, it upsets me working and so on and so forth, but I'm not sure. I can't work, but what's wrong with me? So I think that what they need to do in that situation is consult with a doctor or get a diagnosis from a doctor, or get notes from the doctor about hours they can work, or if they can't work. So what I've seen a lot lately is that anxiety type of base claim, which often leads to depression, or they go hand in hand. And the cause of that, believe it or not, is often the work situation at work. You have somebody whose supervisor has changed, or they're being pressured at work. And as a human being, you have that that flight or fight syndrome that we all possess, or that we grew through evolution with, and often it becomes so stressful. The cortisol level rises in the body, and people just are afraid to get back to work that day, and it could give rise to an anxiety disorder that carries over into other areas of the person's life other than work. So we see that a lot: anxiety, depression. The more obvious ailments that would give rise to a claim would be the cancers, or recovering from cancer, from the chemo and the radiation, where somebody is so weak. I see a lot of people with stomach disorders, irritable bowel syndrome, colitis, Crohn's disease. People who, for example, have a hard time going through the day without being in the washroom quite a bit. So they can't really work, and that sometimes that anxiety comes in with that as well, where they're fearful to go because they might have an accident, or they can't perform at work. So I see those, and yes, we do see people who are in car accidents or slip and falls, or where their injuries are actually physical in nature. as opposed to neurological or psychological in nature. But and it's really any illness that would give rise to them not being able to work, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, because ultimately they'll be diagnosed by their doctors.
Yeah. Right. So actually, let's talk about maybe, are you seeing like a rise in that? Like the people that are coming to you are saying, okay, I'm experiencing this, maybe I've been diagnosed now, and I'm going to now seek leave or compensation for that. Are you seeing that more people are being informed about that?
Right. I see a lot of claims that are anxiety-based. And I don't know, I couldn't say it's an increase over time, but that's what I'm seeing a fair bit. They come in and there's notes that cannot work today because of stress, and or there might not even be a reason on there. I can't work today, can't work, and my question is, okay, why? Why can't you work? Well, my boss, this and that, and I see that a fair bit. People work with other human beings. And they have bosses that it's not a question of they liking or not like, but sometimes the situation at work becomes so toxic that the employee feels victimized and develops a disorder because of the conduct at work.
So in the scenario, they're able to come to you and say, or if they, let's say, first of all, tried to put in a claim, and I don't know how insurance companies respond to that. I would imagine they would just deny or try not to, because it kind of falls into that gray area of, what can you compensate for, what not. So when they come to you, are those claims that you're able to help them out with?
Yeah, absolutely. I find we've got a great success record in getting money, getting claims reinstated or getting settlements for people who have been denied disability benefits. But they have to have merit, and they have to be medically supported by their doctor or by specialists. And also, very important, the person must be seeking treatment for this. They can't just have it and don't go to the doctor and refuse to take medication or counseling that's being offered to them. There is a duty to mitigate, meaning that you have a duty to get counseling, to try to get yourself better. But yes, I see a lot of that, and we do help people in this type of situation very often.
Amazing. And the key word here is knowing how to follow the process. So we're going to talk about that, because oftentimes that's where there's confusion or mistakes made. We got to take a little break. So folks, don't go anywhere. Lots more coming up right after this. Welcome back to ATN. I'm your host, Amin Dillon, in studio chatting with Nainesh Kotak from Kotak Law. Okay, so we just talked a little bit about situations where people might need to file a claim for a short-term or long-term, but before all that, it's always about the process, which is where I think people get confused or just overwhelmed that they just end up not even filing, right? So, which is what we don't want. So can you maybe walk us through, if somebody is experiencing something where they cannot work, what is the process?
Right. So most insurance companies will have 3 parts to the application for long-term disability benefits. And the first one is, it's about 4 pages long usually, depending on the insurance company, and it's called the employee statement. Now it's going to have factual information when they started working at the particular employer, and when the symptom that's giving rise to them not being able to work arose, what doctors they have seen, and it sometimes has them list restrictions in terms of what they can do, what they can't do. So the second form to be filled out is by a qualified physician. Now it could be the family doctor, or if it's a specialist is involved, for a cancer specialist, oncologist, or if there's a psychologist or psychiatrist involved, I would suggest you pick the person you have the best relationship with, who will spend the time with you to fill out that form correctly. And the physician statement will be more about diagnosis and restrictions and expected date of recovery. So the physician will fill that out. The third form is the employer statement. Now, that's very factual as well. The employer will set out their salary, how long they've been working there, and it shouldn't be an issue getting it in. I have seen more recently employers who not only refuse to fill out the form, they actually try to fire the individual for going on the claim. And there is a number of remedies for that. they'll be part of a lawsuit, for example, if the claim is denied. There's what's called a breach of fiduciary duty. There may be a human rights complaint, there may be a wrongful termination complaint. So just because the employer doesn't fill out, my recommendation is, okay, they don't do it, you send in the application anyway to the disability carrier with an explanation. The employer won't fill it out. They may then write, they meaning the insurance company, write to the employer, could you please fill it out? If they don't do that and simply deny, well, that will be all part of the litigation. So the most important parts of the application, in my view, are the physician statement and the employee statement. Yeah.
Question for you, would insurance companies deny a claim just because they don't have the employer statement?
Technically they could, because it's a 3-part application. Okay?
Wow, so then essentially your claim is denied because of them.
Well, that's why you'd bring the employer in.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of that. It's recently I've got a couple of cases where the employer is refusing, and we're suing them. It won't be a hurdle at the end of the day because somebody's going to have to pay. For this. And I think with the right explanation to the insurance company, they may then write to the employer and say, look, it's your obligation. You bought this policy from us. It's your obligation to fill it out. And if and please fill it out and send it in. So that usually that hurdle will be overcome. Yes, it does cause stress for the person who's disabled because they're dealing with forms. So now, let's say all 3 forms have been sent in. An adjudication process will take place. But it doesn't occur in a vacuum, meaning that often there'll be a case officer, there will be a case officer assigned to the file, and they will call the person making the claim and ask questions. And this is where I see often people feel that, look, they keep calling me and asking me questions and they feel harassed. Now I don't, there is a duty obviously on the case officer to ask questions and to clarify things. I do see a lot where I would say, a bit of harassment actually, are you going on vacation? Did you do this today? Did you do that? Just to basically get file notes to put a little pressure on this person. They don't want to deal with the case officer anymore. Maybe they'll go back to work, or maybe they'll just back off the claim if they're denied and don't sue. And that claims adjudication process, I find, really adds to anxiety for people who are already suffering anxiety, for example, from their work, or that had a psychological condition that led to their claim for disability benefits. That process itself of dealing with the insurance company's case officers after the applications have been submitted often compounds their grief that they're suffering.
Absolutely. So let's say they've gone through this process where they've gotten all the information and their claim is denied.
Right.
That's where you step in, right?
Well, absolutely. And it's sometimes I meet with people, they have questions while they've done their application, and I meet with them free. I just have a consultation, let them know, okay, this is what we will do for you. So if you've done the right things, and if you're denied, just come back. So I don't turn people away just because their application is in process. I meet with people just to give them advice in general.
That's
we
a
do
good
that.
thing to know, so they shouldn't wait till they get a decision saying denied. They can come in beforehand.
They can come. We don't charge for that, and we can have that chat with them, certainly. So let's say, though, the claim is denied. There should be a reason, and sometimes the reasons are so vague. I had one recently from an insurance company who just says, honestly, it's basically that we feel the medical evidence does not sustain a claim for disability, and that's it, period. No explanation why. It's almost like it was boilerplated, I don't know. So you see that once in a while. Often it's, we feel that in spite of that, these records, we feel that you could do some other job, or that you could do modified work, and so on and so forth. And then what they do often, a number of insurance companies do, and probably all of them, they have what's called an internal appeal process, where they give you 90 days to file more documentation or make submissions. And in my opinion, it's a waste of time. And except where, for example, something obvious was missed, where your doctor didn't send something that they really wanted, then go ahead and send that. You don't have to do that 90-day appeal, just send it. Say, okay, is this good enough now? But to go through that submission process on the 90-day appeal, it just delays things. Inevitably, you're going to make them more entrenched in their position, the insurance company, and they're going to say no again. So my recommendation is don't fall prey to that, don't fall into that game. Go to a lawyer and just start a lawsuit and fight and have the case fought. And don't correspond with them any more than necessary. Let the lawyer deal with that.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to get inevitably the same decision, and you're going to then extend the time. There are limitation periods to sue. and you're going to again get close. The more you appeal, you get closer to that limitation period, so that you could be out of luck by playing their process of appeal and appeal internally.
And also, you're still handling on your own.
And you're not being paid.
Yeah, you're not being paid, but also if somebody already has had a really difficult time with this whole procedure, for them to continue doing it on their own for the appeal, like I can't even imagine how you can do that. So it's better to go to a lawyer, at least find out what their thoughts are. It doesn't hurt. And then if they can do something for you, like they take over, so you can kind of sit back and feel a little bit more protected.
Exactly. And you want to find a lawyer who's really going to move the claim quickly.
Of course.
Because you don't have the money. You're not getting paid now. So you need a lawyer who will be able to give you the advice on maybe a Canada Pension Plan application for disability and get the lawsuit out really quickly. Get a mediation book fast or discoveries book fast, so there's a resolution rather fast. So you don't lose assets and be in a situation that you're penniless.
Absolutely. Okay, we gotta take another little break. There's lots to talk about. I know it flies by, doesn't it? Folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to ATN. I'm your host, Amit Dhillon, in studio chatting with Nainesh Kotak from Kotak Law. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about how the process is for a claim, but let's actually get back to the claim itself, because I think it's so interesting the reasons why a claim is denied. Because you think oftentimes if someone is going for medical treatment, has symptoms, has been diagnosed, is unable to work, why a claim could be denied. So can you maybe elaborate on that?
The denial letters, sometimes they're more thorough, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they'll talk about this was the test for disability, and you don't meet that test because your doctor hasn't said these key words or what have you. And they may give you some guidance there, and it'd be very, very thorough. Sometimes you get a decision that is like, are they talking about me or somebody else? Because I've got one recently where it just says insufficient medical evidence, and that's it. So. With those, I have more, I shouldn't say fun, but it's nice to examine a discovery, to question the case manager or the person who made that decision about their thought process. I've got a case recently, and I tell you, some of the decisions are, some are good, but some are very frivolous. I've got a client, I can't mention names obviously, so he was involved in he couldn't work, he was disabled, but he agreed to be part of a sort of a return to work program where he'll go for some vocational counseling. He made an appointment. I think it was past January. I think it was around January 14th. He makes the appointment, but he can't make it. He reschedules for the 23rd, 24th, something like, about 2 weeks later. Rescheduled with a private facility who the insurance company had hired to do this training. He rescheduled, but they still cut off his benefits because you didn't attend that day. And it's unfair. And I'm telling you, we see decisions like that are very unfair, and people need to stand up and fight that and say, no, I'm not going to take that. I'm going to sue, and I'm going to get my rights, because that's what it's about. It's a contract, and premiums are paid for that contract, for that disability benefit, and if you're disabled, you want to be paid. And often the decisions don't have the merit, and they just deny the claim. The insurance companies will deny the claim, so it's very important then to fight for your rights, or get someone who will fight for your rights.
Absolutely. I just think that's so unfortunate, because already I'm like, you're going through so much. This person was going back to work part-time, so some income, but most people are completely off work, and like I can't imagine, I don't think any of our viewers could, going for more than even 2 weeks without getting a paycheck, right? Like it's very, very difficult. But that's where you come in. So let's say somebody's in a situation where they are either in the middle of a process, with the insurance company, or they've been denied. How can they work with you in terms of just finding out if there's even something that you can do for them?
Right, just contact us. Our webpage, in fact, has a good long-term disability section that describes ailments that would give rise to long-term disability.
Okay, great.
We get into what we can do for people. So start there, give us a call, and come in, because the consultation is free. And so even if the decision has not been denied yet, we're happy to give a consult about the whole process. And if the case has been denied, would be more than willing to sit down with the person, go over the documentation, explain the litigation process. We like to start our lawsuits with long-term disability cases very quickly. once we get some medical evidence, we want to get it out there to put pressure on the insurance companies to get their own lawyer involved. And often they have in-house legal counsel who are very, very knowledgeable, and they can assess claims very well. So we get them involved. And sometimes, it's a phone call. We have a chat, and the case could be settled over the phone, or they could be reinstated if they realize, wait a minute, the decision is really bad. And often what happens, we'll schedule a mediation, and we'll schedule examination for discovery. Examination for discovery is where the lawyer for the insurance company will question the party who's, our client who's made the claim, about their medical history and their functioning and why they can't work. And we will question that the case officer who decided the case about their knowledge about the duty of good faith, about how they conducted themselves, how they made their notes. And I find that when cooler heads prevail, and then people can sit at a table at a mediation, and there's some great mediators out there that we like to use, and insurance companies like to use, who have been in the business a long time, meaning they were former insurance company lawyers, or so they're trusted on that side. They know the inner workings, and they often help us get a very satisfactory resolution to the case, and quickly. I like to get these cases resolved if possible in the first year, and that's sometimes you can't do that. But I really push to get that done, so people can move on with their life. We also help the clients with doing a CPP, Canada Pension Plan disability application, because that will give them monthly benefits to the age of 65. And there is deductions in most long-term disability insurance policies to deduct Canada Pension Plan disability benefits, whether you apply for it or not. So it's important to actually apply for it.
Of course. And also, I think we should mention is when somebody's in the situation, often when you hear about a lawyer, you think, a lot of money, right? So the first initial consultation is free.
Yes.
And if they decide to go ahead with you, there's no upfront cost, right?
There's no upfront cost. And I don't get paid unless the client gets paid. So it's really a win-win for the client. We've got a great success record. We've got a great team at our office. We're really hands-on in terms of communication with clients. Any questions they have is always phone, email, come and meet with us and come up with a plan or strategy. Or we always love to communicate with clients because they give us updates, the new doctor that they've seen, or the condition is getting better, the condition is getting worse. We need to know that. Same way they need to know what's happening with their case. So communication is so important in the solicitor-client relationship. Absolutely. And I think I want to mention as well, because I know our viewers come from many different backgrounds, you do have different languages available. Yes, absolutely, yes. We do. There's always interpreters if we don't, and there's always family members, but we have most of the Indian languages covered. We have Italian covered. We have Mandarin and Cantonese covered as well. So we have, we live in a multi-ethnic society. So, just by that nature, we also have a multi-ethnic staff as well. Absolutely. And I know we're almost out of time, but I want to quickly mention, you've been well recognized in the community for all of your work, award-winning. So we've done a lot of charitable work, and I think you guys were out there for Kotak Law Military Appreciation Day.
Brampton Beast. Yeah. We had approximately 1,000 troops and veterans and cadets out there. They came up to the suites. We had a great puck drop. Pat Brown was out, Doug Ford was out, Johnny Bauer came out to drop the puck with us. So it was a wonderful day. Yeah. So there's so many ways to get in touch with you. So best way would be go to the website on the screen, give you guys a call, and see what you can do for them. Exactly. We've got a great toll-free number, 188-GO-KOTAK. Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for coming and chatting with us. Always very informed and educational, so hopefully our viewers were able to learn a little bit from today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now that brings us to the end of today's show. I'm your host, Amin Dillon, signing off at the ATN Studios.